Piper, Operating Director of GoBus.
Excuse me. Your Worship, Councillors, thank you for the opportunity to come and address you this morning. GoBus Transport fully supports the proposal to establish the passenger transport hub, including the waiting lounge facilities in Riccarton. GoBus is a major provider of public transport along the Riccarton corridor. We operate many trips per day, transporting large numbers of customers into and from the Riccarton shopping area. We carry a cross-section of passengers through to elderly, to workers in the area, people with disabilities and residents. These passengers deserve a great facility that provides a safe and accessible environment. I'm mindful of your timing, so I've got 3 key points that I'd like to speak to. First of all, safety. The current layout encourages a dangerous mix of traffic and pedestrians. Our drivers daily observe passengers and cars dodging each other while they're attempting to cross the roads to catch buses. There's also issues with pedestrians walking between the buses, which frankly is quite scary. The current stop layout is not adequate to accommodate the number of buses servicing the area. There are frequent examples of either the buses not being able to get into the stops, being stuck into the traffic, and this results generally in motorists and cyclists making unsafe passing manoeuvres. The second point I'd like to speak to is accessibility. We believe that providing the bus stops immediately outside the lounge is critical to the success of this. Passengers with limited mobility need to be close to where the bus is stopping. It's not practical to have the lounge and have the bus stops further down the road. They're simply not going to be able to get there. It's equally important that the bus is able to pull up parallel to the stop to enable the accessibility features that have been built into the buses to be fully utilised. And if I digress slightly, this week we dealt with a complaint from a wheelchair passenger who was unable to disembark from the stop because the bus couldn't get the current stop, couldn't get up to the footpath and deploy the wheelchair ramp. So the only solution they had was to go down to the next stop and allow that passenger to disembark, which put our driver in an unenviable position, but also was greatly for the wheelchair passenger. The bus operators and councils have invested vast sums of money in supplying accessible buses. They have wheelchair bays, ramps, and can kneel to the curb. Christchurch has been a leader in this. It was the first council to insist that buses be built with 2 wheelchair bays to provide positions for people in wheelchairs, but also for mums with a pram and people with mobility walkers and so forth. These features are useless unless we can get the bus up to the parallel to the curb. And the benefits not just for wheelchair passengers, people with limited mobility, as I mentioned before, mums with prams, elderly, use this feature every day. Another point I want to make is that having the ability to get in and out of the stops quickly is essential. It speeds up our boarding and unloading of passengers. It's not a layup, it's a bus stop. So the bus comes in, drops off passengers, picks up passengers and disembarks. They won't be sitting there waiting for departure times and that. It's just a transit point. We also feel the security is going to be important. Is going to be improved. Providing an upmarket facility encourages people to use it and encourages people into the area, and any less desirable people generally don't congregate in those areas where there is security. Where there is CCTV and a lot of people around, it's not an area that they go to. and there's plenty of examples around New Zealand where interchanges and facilities with that type of facility has removed a lot of that congregating of undesirables. And of course, it's one of those self-fulfilling things. The more the better facilities you provide, the more friendly it is, the more people use it, and it's just self-generating. So in conclusion, I'd just like to thank the Council for the opportunity to speak, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Vicky Buck. Paul Lonsdale.
Thank you. Just in terms of the ability for people in wheelchairs and other, and for the whole mobility issue, does it work for you as an operator on the existing stop, if in the existing stop outside the mall, if it were lengthened to allow the number of buses to actually fit in there as opposed to sticking out as they currently do?
Yeah, I would imagine that it would. The existing stop allows the buses to deploy and kneel,
Right.
so the curb is adequate for that.
In terms of the structure, if you were designing this and you had a skinny, narrow structure that you may or may not be able to build anything on, given that you may not own it, what sort of structure would you then put there?
In terms of the footpath and the curbing structure, you mean?
Where in place of the current bus stops outside Riccarton Mall?
I guess the key thing is providing shelter with sufficient curb height and for us to use those accessible features would be the key thing. I suppose the other point is that we need good access to where the people want to go, and I think the point that the position of this proposal gives that.
Paul Lonsdale.
Two questions. This question I asked before, and you'd obviously had more information. How are your customers enjoying the Northlands model? It seems to me this model could fit very nicely in the current location.
I think the general feedback is that it was an improvement on what they had before, but it's not perfect. But I guess it's one of those things you never please everyone.
And the second thing was around security. You talked about the undesirables wouldn't want to be where security is. Now the security are going to be inside the bus, the model, the lounge, which would then say to me that the undesirables will then go out in the street and cause the problems. So,
yeah, I think the proposal included closed circuit TV cameras and the likes, and just general population. They're unlikely to graffiti something while there's a lot of people around, and the chances of getting caught.
Jamie Goff.
Thanks. Actually, this makes it a bit quicker. Vicky asked my first question, Paul asked the second, so I'm pretty good, apart from just your answer that you gave, and it was around the super stop. My question was really going to be about, from an operational perspective, how GoBus is finding the super stop on Main North Road by Northlands. Just your comment interested me, though, around working well but not perfect. I know perfect doesn't quite exist, but what could be done in a realistic, feasible fashion that would make that super stop better or more functional from your perspective?
Look, to be honest, I don't think I'm qualified to answer that question. I'm a relatively new arrival in Christchurch, so I didn't really have a lot of exposure to how it worked before. Unfortunately, if I had a colleague here who might be able to answer, he'd be able to give probably a more informed position.
So just when you say it's not perfect, it could be better. Not sure how though.
Okay, the feedback that I've had.
Just generally, I'm not trying to grill you.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
Except that we're running out of time, so.
Yes, or we were to, yes. I suppose it's one of those things that whatever you do is never going to be perfect. I mean, main thing is the ability to get in and out of the stops quickly, and the traffic flow through there doesn't necessarily lend itself to that happening.
Thank you. 20 seconds to go. Thank you very much for your time, and I think our next submitter may well be able to